Right. Welcome, Tristan. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, glad you guys are having me.
And yes, I already told you, but I do love your accent. So talk away. So
Uh,
South African, in case no one knows.
yeah, born and bred in South Africa. Parents are from Holland, but I've lived here my whole life. Um,
Amazing.
and yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah. So I'll get you to jump into telling me a little bit about that in a minute. But to start with, we're here to talk about your companies because you have multiple, and your supplement, your optimization, your interest in all these things, wonderful health and wellness. So we're going to dive into that. But first, how did you get into this sort of stuff? Like how did guys South Africa start to think about creating a company that helps people get optimized?
Oof. Yeah, so I've always been into health and wellness. Well, my definition of health and wellness now is very different to what it used to be back in the day, but I was always active and had a bit of a curious mind, and I always had a bit of a passion for science and biology. And I landed up studying biochemistry and genetics at this university here in Johannesburg.
Mm.
And during this, I was taking Concerta or ADHD medication, and I hated it. I hated how it made me feel. It was terrible. I didn't eat properly. I didn't sleep properly. It took away my personality. And the more I got into my studies, the more I realized that there were possible alternatives. And I stumbled across the topic of nootropics. And then from there, I stumbled across the topic of biohacking. And then this whole world of kind of like optimal human performance and these different functional approaches to health and wellness started coming up. And yeah, I just started experimenting on myself like every kind of biohacker tends to do. And from there, I started selling a couple nootropic mixes that I was using personally to get myself off of Concerta. And I thought this would be an amazing little, like side business hustle that I could have at university because everyone's looking for a bit of an edge. And it started doing quite well. And I opened up my first online store, and I got my first business partner, and I lost my first business. And we go through all these different motions. And then it moved from just being a solely kind of nootropic based company. I think the first company was called Alpha Nootropics. And then we started branching out into just general, fully fledged, like human optimization products. So everything from red light therapy to nootropics to adaptogens to consultations. And then we started forming a whole bunch of different companies to have like this synergistic flow between what we're doing. And skip forward a couple of years. This all started in about like 2014, 2015. I was about 20 or 19 at the time.
Wow.
And now, after kind of that's all happened, we've got Prime Health Holdings, which is the holding company where we do distribution and marketing and manufacturing of products our own, as well as some other ones from around the globe. And we've got Optimize, which is our optimized living. We prefer to use the word optimized instead of biohack. It's just got a bit of a nicer feel to it. And then we've got Prime Self, which is one of our supplement ranges. And then we've got Neuroactive, which is a slightly more like research-based nootropic and longevity range, where you've got like your racetans and bioNMN and resveratrol, C60 oils, etc.
Yes.
That's kind of like the dumbed down, summarized, quick version of
You did that very well. Love it. And there's so much I want to pull apart from that. So in terms of running a business, firstly, I want to sort of set the scene and the context here, because South Africa is in a bit of upheaval, as is the rest of the world with COVID, I know. But I want to sort of get your perspective on running a business in South Africa and how that might be, a little bit different to where, businesses might be run in other parts of the world, as well as, has there been any difficulties along the way relating to where you are starting a company, that sort of thing?
Look, I think if we look at the whole e-commerce space, which is where our kind of business predominantly lies, it's still a really new thing here in South Africa. Well, it's not as widely adopted as it is overseas. I mean, in the US, if I use them as an example, there's like 500 different dropshipping companies, 500 different like third-party fulfillment agencies, 5 different like contract manufacturers that can like do all your manufacturing and production and labeling for you. Here we've got one company that does like third-party fulfillment. We've got like 1 or 2 companies that do small-scale manufacturing. So we're really, really limited in terms of the options that we have. And with that, there's very little competition, and lack of competition drives very little growth. So it's definitely got its challenges, but it's not impossible. And we've kind of been maneuvering and navigating all the different challenges, and it seems to be working out quite well. And we've developed a really good relationship with the third-party agencies and services that we use. But I think the biggest curveball that we've encountered was COVID, number one. The whole world kind of shut down, and we went into like it was supposed to be a 2-week, and then it was a 4-week, and then it was like an 8-week, complete, utter, like full lockdown. And yeah, as like a small business, you're really reliant on your constant cash flow and those orders going out and coming in, and it would have been devastating if we weren't able to operate. So we were scrambling to, I was prepared to go camp out in our office personally, like sleeping bags, like canned food and everything, to make sure that, I was able to operate from there and ship our orders out from there. And
exactly.
It was chaotic nonetheless, but then the laws and legislations came out that outlined that any essential service, so essential services were like medical workers or frontline workers, and certain vitamins and health products fell into that category. So I had the wild idea of being like, okay, well, we've got tons of vitamin C. Everyone's looking for vitamin C. It's dirt cheap. We're just going to pump as much vitamin C into capsules and bottles as possible. And every single order that was going out was getting a bottle of vitamin C. And that way we fell into that essential services category, even though we're sending out a bottle of, maybe it's, like a pair of red blue light blocking glasses.
Yes.
It had a bottle of vitamin C, and we printed out the contents and we stuck it on the outside of the package. So yeah, it's been difficult, but where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely.
And the way to navigate through it all.
Yeah. And by the way of giving them the vitamin C, you're also helping everyone's immune systems out just that little bit more.
There was like a massive shortage of, there was that whole panic buying that was going on. I don't know how, relevant that was on your side, but guys were looting toilet paper and all the vitamin shops were empty. And we had guys buying like 50, 60 bottles of our immune boost at a time. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, it's got a 2-year expiration date. It's a 1-month supply. I don't know what you're doing with like 3 to 6 years worth of product. But anyway, so we had to start limiting customers and what they could purchase so we could spread that out. And it's been a pretty difficult 2 years, but it's definitely tested the resiliency of, well, myself, most importantly, and obviously the business, because if we were able to navigate and make it through all of these things, and now we had recently this whole like civil war that was on the brink of breaking out with all these riots and everything, that was like another little test to the title of the business. I think it's definitely got some pros due to the fact that it's such a new market and there's so few competition here. It makes it very easy to get in, and there's a very like low barrier to entry to get into the market. Whereas, in the US, I'll use them as an example because it's very easy to relate to them. There's like 1 million nootropic companies there. So if you want to get involved in doing something there, you've already got these massive players on the market. Whereas here you've got guys that are popping in and they go under, and then, don't think there's been any long-standing companies in this space that I know of.
That's fantastic.
Apart from us, yeah.
Yeah, and the growth is just going to be amazing. But I love the education that you put into it and the research that you put into it too. So it's, you know, it's the quality, and then you're helping grow an industry in the right way versus feeding the wrong information or the wrong supplements in, which is so good. And that's the right way to build an industry in a country that hasn't seen it before.
Yeah, but I mean, that's everything. We're not here to, like, obviously the nature of the business is to sell a product. That's how we make our money. But we're here to sell, number one, the right products, and also education is key. And people also need to realize that supplements are not the magic solution to everything.
Yeah.
So I get a phone call from someone being like, okay, well, this is my problem and this is what I want to do. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, how does your sleep look? How does your diet look? Like, how much alcohol do you drink? And they're like, yeah, well, you know, I have a couple of beers every night and I sleep maybe like 4 to 5 hours. I don't do any exercise and I eat chips all day long. I'm like, okay, well, listen, you know, like a sleep product's not going to do much for you. You probably need to get your lifestyle and diet and general habits in check before you get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all starts there. And then that's that growth where people get it, you know, dropping the seed, and then they start to be able to get out there and actually notice different things and being aware of different things and how that makes them feel. And, oh, wow, I feel so much better by just having those small little changes, just by drinking some water, for example, which is so good. Yeah. All right. So that's all amazing. Now, I really want to dive into some of your amazing products. So I want you to run me through some of those. And even the rest hams, because I get quite a few people querying about that. I take a few of the rest hams myself when I need to have a bit of a performance edge in terms of concentration and, you know, really busy day lecturing or a busy day in clinic, and I need to like be focused and be on. But also all the other nootropics. I'm very interested in that. There's a massive need and use in that, and a lot of people don't even know they exist. So run me through some of, you know, and your formulations that you've got, because I'm really fascinated to hear all about it.
Well, yeah, I think the first one to start with is probably so we've got Prime Self and we've got Neuroactive, and Prime Self is we call them smart supplements or functional supplements. It's kind of this gap between you've got your vitamins and minerals, and you've got sports supplements over here, and we kind of fall into this gap in the middle where, well, I call them functional supplements. I don't know what they're actually called, but yeah, that's what we call them. And they're just these natural formulations, and the whole idea behind them is that each product serves a specific purpose. We don't have a one product that does everything with like an ingredient panel of like 600 different things at these random little dosages. We've got one product for your gut, and all those ingredients are included at, you know, effective dosages and synergy between the ingredients. And there's like a purpose behind the product. They're not built for profit, but really they're built for function. So that's the whole idea behind the Prime Self range. And my personal favorite product is the Prime Mind formulation, which is our flagship nootropic. It's a blend of different natural nootropics and herbs like lion's mane and copa, phosphatidylserine, and it's all around brain health and neurogenesis and acetylcholine production. And that particular product was actually my stack that I developed when I was in university trying to get myself off Concerta, because I think a lot of people, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here, but people confuse concentration with focus. Concentration is the ability to, you know, like make sure that your thoughts are aligned and you're able to focus on a task without having some sort of stimulant providing that. And whereas focus comes more from like mental energy and is generally associated with something that has like a stimulant property. So Prime Mind is a completely stimulant free. It's something that you can take essentially at any time of the day. If you take it in the evening, you're probably gonna have weird and wacky dreams. But yeah, it's just there as to be this like really, really amazing brain supportive, cognitive enhancing formulation. And that's kind of where the range developed from. That was the first product. And then there was a sleep product alongside that, which is really cool. Unfortunately, we have laws here where we can't use melatonin, so we have to find every other kind of like way around it. Yeah. South Africa, surprisingly, for such a like nearly loose country, we've got, I think, some of the most strict and stringent complementary medicine laws.
Wow.
So,
wow.
yeah.
So I would say, because we're pretty strict and stringent here in Australia, so maybe South Africa is more similar to Australia than I thought.
End up migrating from here to there when they decide they're moving overseas. Which we've got, I mean, that melatonin is scheduled, N-acetylcysteine, which, okay, I guess that's getting scheduled everywhere and anywhere now. But yeah, it's difficult, and it makes navigating the scene a little difficult, but they're also not on top of the regulations. So there's always like a bit of a gray area that you can kind of pass through on your way. But yeah, it definitely makes it a little difficult. But yes, back to where we were. Yeah, so that's kind of Prime Self and the product that is there. For those of you guys that don't know what nootropics are, they're essentially just cognitive enhancing compounds. They boost anything from memory to focus to concentration to brain health, neurogenesis, whatever it is. And by definition, they're supposed to be safe. So you get smart drugs and you get nootropics. Adderall, Concerta, modafinil, I guess, or Wake Alert is considered a smart drug, and nootropics are considered nootropics when they meet certain criteria, like beneficial to brain health, low on side effects, generally have like a very good tolerance.
Yeah.
No.
So you also stock in some of the rastams. Sort of, where do they fit in? Like, do you combine those with some of your products, or is they sort of a standalone product that you would be using?
Yeah, so that falls into the other range, which is the neuroactive range, which is once again like a way that we navigate all the rules here. And obviously the intent is not to try, like stick it to the law, but rather just do it the right way. And we have a mix of different products. We have the standalone racetams like oxiracetam, aniracetam, etc. We have some formulations that we've put together. We have one called NeuroFlow, which is, I think, probably my favorite nootropic for days where I really just need to get in the zone and crush out a whole bunch of work. And that's a mix of aniracetam, oxiracetam, noopept, and alpha-GPC, which is like a really cool synergistic combination. So you get stimulant from oxiracetam, and aniracetam has those really nice like anxiolytic effects, and noopept kind of just fits and mixes and matches in the middle. And then you've got the acetylcholine for replacing the acetylcholine that is used up from the racetams. But we've got a whole range of all those synthetic nootropics, and those fall into straight up a gray area in South Africa. They don't fall into the complementary or dietary supplement space. They aren't regulated, so we sell them for research purposes, as majority of the companies do around the world. It's just the general going practice in terms of how to do it. And we've been in contact with the board or the body here in South Africa, which is actually it used to be called the MCC, and now it's called SAFRA. And they just unable to give us an answer on whether what we're doing is, up to scratch for them or not. And so we're navigating through it as it is for now. But we have separated everything else. So we have a retail range, which is Prime Self, which, we sell as dietary supplements. And then we have the general nootropics. But obviously everyone that's, buying nootropics is most likely taking them. But,
Okay. So is that sort of like a reason why you also sort of split out the companies? I'm just fascinated by, you know, how we run, you know, is it more so also because of legislation, you know, just making sure that, you know, so if one particular area, you know, obviously something happens in South Africa and the legislation's changed around certain products, then you've still got to go and you can go with the rest of the companies. Is that sort of a thinking behind it, or is it more so just for the product separation?
It's a bit of all,
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely want to do like some risk management and
Yeah.
have everything stood up a little bit,
Yeah.
so that if something does happen, we have, you know, options around it. But the other one is the just kind of like brand identity. So Prime Self, it's inspired by nature. That's kind of like the core principle behind the brand and
Yeah.
the driving force. It's a little kind of productive to say that, and then you've got like this racetam blend in like another part of the range. Yeah, and it's also just like a different look and feel in terms of like packaging and branding and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And Neuroactive is actually a range that we acquired. It's a business that we bought. It was actually my old business partner from 2015, and we went separate ways. And he created Neuroactive, and I created Prime Self, and I created another business called ZA Nootropics. ZA being like South Africa kind of abbreviation. And yeah, and then we got a couple of investors involved, and we were looking at scaling up, and we acquired that business back from my old business partner, and we absorbed ZA Nootropics into Neuroactive, and we kept their look and feel to just please that customer base. And we thought it was really like funky as well. It's got like a very like clinical, sciencey, but funky feel to it as well. Don't have any models around me, but yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
I did. Yeah, and we had a couple other brands as well. We had one called Higher Health, and we had another one called just Higher Health, and we kind of like absorbed it. It got really difficult managing and trying to use one team, and you know, like we got 2 designers in house, and there's a lot of cross contamination between all the websites and the branding and the marketing and the CI.
Yeah. That's what sort of fascinates me by the fact that, you know, how you're running it, and you know, it's very interesting that the sort of model that you're doing, and having to have so much that you're looking after and looking over and making sure it's all running really nicely. So it must be one very busy man.
we got a fantastic team as well, though. But all the businesses are pretty synergistic, which is why we created that website called Optimize, which is our marketplace for optimal living. So the whole thing is everything that you need for an optimized life. And on there, we stock the Prime Self range, we stock the Neuroactive range, and we stock a whole bunch of other products locally that we source, like beef liver capsules, a couple of CBD brands. We've got True Dark and True Light from the US, Dave Asprey's company. Nude, it's like a natural, eco-friendly anti-odorant, which is amazing. I've been using that stuff for like 6 or 7 months. It took me a good 3-4 weeks to.
Yeah, you got to get into it.
Smells in check. But yeah, the whole we just want to kind of. That's a nice way to like consolidate what we're doing in a sense.
Absolutely. So just touching on CBD while you mentioned it, what are the laws in South Africa around cannabis and CBD? I haven't touched on that yet, or haven't even looked into that yet.
CBD is legal up to a dosage of 20 milligrams per serving per day, I think it's limited to. So I think in terms of products, we get 600 milligrams per bottle. The dosage is pretty low. And personally, a lot of the CBD that's advised for or advocated for like sleep and pain and stuff, 20 milligrams is probably not going to do an awful much. But we're working on it, and cannabis has been, the laws are still kind of underway, but you're allowed to grow cannabis and you're allowed to have possession and you can travel with it. And all of this is come around recently in the past like 2-3 years, and it seems to be getting better. But the whole thing around THC is still a bit of a gray area in terms of consumption and use of it and everything. But you are allowed to have a cannabis plant, and pretty sure you're allowed to travel with cannabis. I definitely wouldn't advocate one just going and flying now with weed around South Africa. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, you're allowed to.
Okay, according to the laws, yeah. Whether you choose to do that or not is up to you.
In terms of availability, it's pretty simple. Like you could get it anytime, anywhere, and you still kind of can. It's just a little crazy. We've got like e-commerce websites in South Africa, which definitely completely illegal, but you can order edibles and flour or whatever it is from an online website. But yeah, that's just on South Africa being pretty poor with management in that sense.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I've heard. But doing better than Oz, because we still, like, CBD is just coming into prescription from pharmacists, otherwise illegal, still not allowed to have it, and any cannabis as well. I think if you can have one cannabis plant in possession, you don't get charged, but still classified as illegal. And the CBD, there's no company that's been able to supply the pharmacy prescription yet. So there's nothing being agreed yet. So they still can't access it. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's just, so far behind here on that front too. So I'm interested to see what South Africa's like.
Yeah. I actually can't believe that you guys don't even have CBD as like a past.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's blown away every time we say that. It's just nuts. Like, I traveled over to London a couple of years ago and I walked into a cafe straight off the plane, and they're like, "Oh, would you like CBD in your coffee?" I'm like, "Oh, are we allowed to?" Are you kidding me? Yeah, I'll have 3, thank you. Yeah. All right, so we've talked about your supplements and all that sort of stuff, and products, favorite products, nootropics, which I love. Now, talk to me about sport performance. Where do you where are your favorite things to go with that? And I know you're into a lot of sport performance. What do you use personally? And then I'll go into your other sort of hacks and things that you love to use.
Sure. So I've always been pretty active. I used to be really into gym, and I wouldn't say bodybuilding, but definitely like a lot more bulky and large than I am now. And I did a bit of boxing and taekwondo and a whole bunch of martial arts. But recently, as of February 2020, so just before COVID hit, I got into triathlons, and yeah, it kind of just steamrolled from bet between a couple of friends to do a half Ironman in 6 months, which would have been last year, June, July. Lockdown came in and I kind of just got stuck into all the training, and I lost interest in gym and I lost interest in the martial arts, and I just really got stuck into the triathlon training. So that's become like a bit of a obsession, as some might say. I train like 1 to 2 times a day. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much takes up a huge chunk of my time. I think I do 12 to 14 hours a week of training at the moment, in the biohacking or optimization or just like the general healthy lifestyle habits. Number one, allow me to do that and still, live a normalish life and go to work without feeling absolutely pooped every day. And I think it's also made a huge difference in terms of like the performance gains and stuff that I've made in a short space of time from where I started to where I am now.
Yeah.
I mean, to give you some perspective, I couldn't even run 5 kilometers last year, Jan, Feb when I started, or like I could run 5 kilometers, but like stop and try catch your breath and gather yourself and your senses, and you carry on running again. And now I'm running maybe like 40 to 50 kilometers a week and cycling like 150 and swimming a whole bunch as well. So come a long way in a shortish space of time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, and training wise, like you have good options outdoors, like, you know, as in the ability to train even in sort of lockdowns and things like that. That's okay for you. You can actually get out and do that.
So in the original lockdown, not so much, but I moved into an apartment block a couple years ago, and it's lovely. It's got these two apartment buildings parallel to each other, and there's this garden area that runs like a figure of 8 around the buildings. So they were pretty loose and relaxed with the restrictions within the property. So every morning I'd wake up and I was running around this like figure 8 track, which was like maybe like 400 meters ish, 500 meters ish, but like through trees and around rocks, and I managed to get that done. So it was really nice to be able to like get outside and get some exercise. And then in terms of the cycling, thank God for technology. There's I don't know if you're familiar with Zwift.
No, I don't think so. As in a bike?
Yeah, well, it's actually like a program. So you hook your bike up to an indoor trainer, which kind of like attaches to the back wheel of the bike. And then that trainer connects via Bluetooth to your computer or tablet or iPad or whatever it is. And on that device, you've got Zwift. And this is virtual world where you can cycle and or run. And depending on the gradient or the bike that you're using or your weight, it adjusts the difficulty and the resistance on your back wheel. So it simulates this real world cycling.
That's so cool. I'll have to check it out. I've not heard about it.
Yeah. Which is really cool. And then obviously on your screen, you can see other people and you can cycle with them, or you can race with them, or do whatever it is. And they've got different worlds. And it's very similar to kind of like the Wii worlds. Back from when they had like all the Wii Fits stuff. I don't know what the relation is there. But yeah, that was really, really cool. And yes, exactly. So yeah, that's how we made it possible.
Okay. Yeah, fascinates me again with COVID, how everyone sort of continued on their path of sporting ventures and fitness and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, really cool to hear. So what are your personal daily favorite hacks and things, or, you know, your optimized support for your body? What are you doing every day? And, you know, products that you're using or things that you do that you have to do every day to keep yourself optimized?
I used to do a lot more in terms of supplementation, and used to take this massive like overboard stack in nootropics, and over time I've realized that it was probably a little unnecessary, and I've dumbed it down to like super simple few little hacks. And for me it's mostly about the morning routine and the evening routine, and everything else in between is a bit of a muchness. But the morning routine is wake up and hydrate first. I try to do that as much as I can. Sometimes I forget or in a bit of a rush. But that's typically just warm water or room temperature water with some salt and lemon. Sometimes some apple cider vinegar if I'm feeling brave, but not such a fan of it. And then, generally have training in the morning. So that's my movement for the day, either swimming, cycling, running, or gym, or whatever it is. Normally up around 5 a.m. So that's an early-ish. And then, at the same time, I generally get some like sunlight and fresh air and light movement. And, those are all like really, really important things to have as part of your morning routine. And thankfully, they all kind of fit into what I do. So there's no like active effort to, like, okay, I need to go get sunlight, and now I need to go like stretch and do some movement, and I need to go hydrate, because it's water bottle with salt and lemon, off to go train and do my thing, and then come to the office. I generally do everything on a fasted, in a fasted state, and then I'll typically eat post workout, which is maybe like 8-9 o'clock when I get into the office, and then I'll have a coffee around like 9 o'clock as well, which is typically just black with some keto creamer potentially, or MCTs, And that is the morning routine. So if I were to like bullet point it, it's like movement, lights, hydration, etc. And the evening routine, I wear blue light blocking glasses from TrueDark. Got these like really cool red ones, and they take a little time to get used to. I typically try eat about 3 hours before I sleep.
Yeah.
That has a massive impact on my recovery and sleep, and body doesn't get into that recovery rest mode. It's busy digesting while you're sleeping. And I'm also a bit obsessed with tracking metrics. So I've got the Garmin watch, and I've got an Oura ring, and everything. And I try, my phone switches off at about like 7, 8 p.m. To that do not disturb mode, which is wonderful for my phone. And then I still watch TV and do my usual thing or sit on the laptop, but I try not to work at all to keep the mind less stimulated. And then I sleep completely blacked out with an eye mask. And I'll typically take some sort of magnesium blend or magnesium supplement in the evening. And then get 7 hours ideally of sleep, 7 to 8. So I'm in bed super early. I'm asleep by like 9 o'clock. Ready to get up at 5 again. And that's typically it. So it's super simple. It's sustainable. It's like part of my routine. There's no, like I said, like active effort in trying to hack yourself, and everyone ends up trying to do these like absurd things, or they're trying to do like 15 billion different things to make sure that they optimize. But you can break it down into things that are super simple, that just fit your daily routine, and that way you don't fall out of them or you don't break them.
Great.
And then in terms of supplements, it tends to vary quite a bit. I've been using desiccated beef liver caps for a couple of weeks now, and it's actually really good, but also quite difficult to tell with something like that. But typically a lot of mitochondrial ingredients and adaptogens. So we've got like ALA and resveratrol and CoQ10, bioenamine, and then like rhodiola rosea and Pico-2, which is a mushroom blend from Compound Solutions. Absolutely amazing. I did not go a day without taking that. Notable increase in like endurance and VO2 max and time to fatigue. So that's like my number one product. Wherever I go, I always have Pico-2 in some shape or form on me.
So how many mushrooms are in there? Is there quite a few, or?
Yeah, I think it's like 8 different mushrooms. I'm assuming the blend is predominantly cordyceps based, because cordyceps is typically the one that people use for sports and endurance. But they've got a patented, hidden blend, and I'm not usually a fan of hidden blends. But my view on that is, if you have some sort of like clinical study backing your specific blend, cool, have a blend. If you're just putting a blend together to try and make it seem fancy or be sneaky, you probably shouldn't have a blend. But anyways, they've got a blend, and there's some studies behind the efficacy of this blend, and I absolutely love it. And I find that it's a little more effective than just plain cordyceps mushroom. That'd be the quality of that particular mushroom blend, or the synergy between those mushrooms. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. So
I love mushrooms. In all forms. We use a lot. We've got our tinctures now that they make in a glycetract form. So we get lion's mane glycetract tinctures, and we can shot them back or mix them in with our compounded liquid herbs. So we use them in the herbal dispensary in our heaps. It's really cool.
Okay. And psilocybin in Oz, is that also like a no-go zone?
It's illegal, but everyone uses it if you can get it. And people grow it in their houses. That's harder to find than the cannabis. Doesn't smell so bad. So it's harder to say. But I love it personally, and I speak openly about it a lot. I love microdosing a lot. And a lot of my sort of mentors and people my colleagues will always be talking about microdosing and MDMA and also LSD and all sorts of things to actually support brain function and higher learning and higher living. So I think they're all fantastic.
Okay, yeah, well, definitely agreed. Actually took a microdose this morning, so
there you go.
Definitely on
extra
the same
creative.
page, yeah. We actually make our own kind of like in-house blend where it's psilocybin. It's very similar to Paul Stamets protocol, if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
So it's got like the neurogenesis promoting compounds, the niacin for that flushing effect, and then we put a couple other nootropics like ginseng and ginkgo biloba that seem to work quite well with psilocybin in terms of just general like focus and cognitive flow.
Very cool. So you can sell that in South Australia?
No.
Wait, is South Africa? That was a secret one. Don't tell anyone.
That's just for the in-house team and everyone just, yeah.
That's making everyone's orders run faster.
Hopefully sometime soon. I see there's a lot of companies in Canada doing the, like microdosing protocols, and it looks awesome. And also a big advocate for that, and microdose and macrodose when used responsibly. But
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely,
moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think, again, there's ayahuasca and all plant medicines that need to be equally respected, but they are there to be used, I feel, and they can have so much benefit for the human race and compassion and humanity and learning and balance and all that sort of stuff. So it's it needs to be spoken about, and I love speaking about it openly, because the more people know about it, the more they're going to want it, and then the more that it's going to have to come out and people start to provide for it. So and so much research has been done on all of it, and the MAPS Institute in America, it's all those that are portraying or pushing in the right direction, which is fantastic.
Yeah, well, hopefully someday soon there'll be retreats that you can go to for, like open and responsible use. Probably a little later than sooner, but one can hope.
I reckon about 5 years, maybe, the way that the world's moving so fast at the moment. So I don't think it's that far off, but I'll probably be wrong on that. Hoping.
We'll see.
All right. So how about any favourite technologies? And I know you're using the red light glasses, and I know that you have the panels that you sell too, the red light panels. Anything else that you sort of swear by or have used and really love?
Ordering, definitely probably my favorite. A little bit. I've got like a reminder set to make sure that thing is charged all the time. So it's actually sitting on charge at the moment, so that it's got battery for a week. And that's amazing. Like being able to just track your body metrics and recovery and sleep and heart rate variability is really important. Otherwise, in terms of tech, just limiting blue lights with the blue light blocking glass is obviously amazing. Red light therapy, I'm definitely an advocate for it, and I like the science behind it all, and there's a lot of research supporting it, but very difficult to give a review on, because it's something that you've got to continuously do, and I don't know if it's because, so obviously my idea of using that is for recovery purposes and inflammation and that kind of thing, and my body's always a little sore and a little stiff, so it's hard to tell if it's working, but I use it anyways, and I'm still pro the use of it. But I do like the idea that it's more for like simulating sunset and sunrise if you're not able to get that natural like red light emission in, which just syncs your whole circadian rhythm up. And then another one which is difficult to tell is actually the grounding mats or earthing mats. So we recently started selling those. Everyone's got them in the office underneath their desks or on the desk or whatever it is. And like we've checked them with some like voltmeters or whatever they are. Let the physics guys
Yeah.
answer on that one. And there's definitely some sort of like effect in terms of the earthing. And then the other thing is on the Garmin smartwatches, you've got something called body battery. And typically body battery gets drained throughout the day as you do activity and stress levels go up. And it increases throughout the night or during periods of rest. So typically you don't see much increase in body battery throughout the day. It's got a decline. But when sitting on the grounding mat for extended periods of time, it seems to significantly lower my stress levels, which is a metric on the watch, as well as increase the body battery. And let that also be placebo or whatever it is. It's great to see, and it's a positive indicator. And it's a nice way to stay like grounded in the earth while sitting in an office at a desk touching a computer all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Yeah, I've sort of used some of those mats and things before, but I've not actually measured any metrics around it or done any sort of looking at any levels as such. So that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, it's always nice to have something that can back up what you're doing, or like a real indicator. Like you drink a cup of coffee and you feel a little buzzed. There's something that's like quite notable there. But if I hand you this mat and you're sitting on this mat all day, it's a little difficult to tell. And if we're going to be advocating the products, I want to be pretty confident in their efficacy and whether I'm selling something that's a whole bunch of hocus pocus or not. So we try and do that as much as possible. Blood glucose monitors also, funnily enough, something that I really, really like, or continuous glucose monitors rather. But pretty expensive and major mission to constantly have. But really, really cool to see the effects of like different types of food and how you can pair different foods and the effects of pairing foods and activity and water, pre-post food. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. Yeah. But I've used them a couple of times and it's really cool to see how the body responds to different things. Funnily enough, literally a bowl of oats or steel cut oats, massive spike and drop in glucose levels. Just throw a little bit of peanut butter in there or some sort of fats and or protein actually, and it's got a lot more of a kind of like a flat, sustainable, bell-shaped curve, much less of a like significant glucose spike and drop. So
important to understand the effect of food and how easy it can be to change that just by adding some small things in, even changing your whole meal.
Exactly. It's the same oats, same box.
Yeah.
Made it the same way. It's literally just a little bit of peanut butter inside of it, or a protein or collagen or whatever it is. And that's why I think like whole foods and it's not about leaving out carb. I hate diets. I absolutely hate them. I don't understand. It's like you can only eat this and this is what you got to do. Like I'm all for fueling for purpose. You've got to eat accordingly to what you're doing. I mean, I typically eat pretty healthy. Well, I'd like to think so. But my like pre-race day or like race morning fuel up is literally a Pop-Tart. Which is as like unhealthy as it gets, and I never eat Pop-Tarts, but I only eat them on race day, just because it's literally like pure sugar in like its simplest form. It's literally like icing on like sugary bread with sugar in the middle with chocolate coated in sugar, and it's exactly what you need for racing. And the other thing is when you're waking up at like 3 a.m. to stuff like a bowl of oats down while I'm absolutely stressed and I have no interest in eating, a Pop-Tart goes down pretty easy. But again, fueling for purpose, and it seems to do pretty well.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm totally for that. And again, I have a lot of athletes that come in and friends who are athletes that talk about that. And I just like, we just got to, I'm just like, really? Like, do you have to eat all that yucky sugar beforehand? It's like, it's the only way, Jodi. I'm like, oh. But yeah, I get that. And then you're burning it off and it's just really fueling the muscles. So yeah, it's the way to do it when you need to have the race.
Exactly. And it's exactly that. It literally just gets used instantly. I mean, the whole, like, literally all we eat for a race is like these sachets that contain like corn syrup and sugar and some odd flavor. And you taking those things like every like 30, 45 minutes. And generally, and I'd be interested to actually run the continuous glucose monitor during a race and seeing if there's actually like a massive spike. There's definitely going to be a lot of dips, but yeah,
that would be interesting. You have to report back to me on that one. So I've never had anyone. That'd be fascinating. All right, so I don't keep you too long. I wanted to now just touch base on what's new, what's coming up for Prime Health, for the companies, for the products, that anything new that's coming up, anything you want to tell people about, and sort of where to find you and all about the products that you do.
Sure. We'll start with where to find us. Easiest place is probably just either my social media pages or the Optimized website. That's got everything that we do, and we're mostly active on that side of the business in terms of like the mailers and the socials, and that's just OPTMZ, which is like kind of shortish for Optimize. It is, but it isn't.
I'll link to it in the notes.
Yeah. And then in terms of what's new, we've got actually a really cool product coming from, I'm not sure where it's from. I think it's from Switzerland. It's called Spermidine, or Spermidine Life.
Yes.
Yeah. Also like a really crazy product. It was originally discovered from actual like semen sperm, I think. But now they extract it from germ wheat, and it's got these, it's got like a lot of research around how it it's great for longevity and anti-aging, and particularly autophagy or cell death. So we're busy testing that product out and trying it and reviewing it, and all the stuff that we sell, we try in-house and we send it around and get it reviewed. So that's exciting. Transcriptions is another really cool product that we're going to be stocking, the blue tongue methylene blue stuff.
Yes.
And probably the most exciting actually is we're looking at expanding into the UK and the EU in the next couple of months. So we're going to be launching pilots of the Optimize or the Prime Self e-commerce store up that side, seeing how it does and taking the first steps into the international market. And hopefully it does well, because South Africa was so like down and secluded, and it's really difficult to ship stuff out of South Africa because the shipping value is like more than the actual contents that we're shipping. So it'll be really cool if we can get it out into Europe or the UK, and then hopefully into Australia as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you'll have to keep me posted and everyone posted about that. But any listeners obviously listening in from South Africa can get that, and then look out for the UK. And yeah, amazing. I love what you're doing. I love that you're testing, you're passionate about the products, and you're in it and using it all yourself. And I really love that, appreciate that, and really respect that. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, pleasure. And yeah, keep me posted on what's going on for you, and we'll definitely be in touch in the future.
Definitely will. Thanks, Jodi.
No worries, Tristan.